Our next speaker is a firecracker. This young guy is so sharp, and I'm going to give you my synopsis on this young man. First off, he's 29 years old. He's an DMV originator. He is got an incredibly multicultural background. I'm telling you, this young man is sharp. If you've heard him before, you know who I'm talking about. He has a background, and he's got a connection to so many things. He doesn't really have one interest. He's got all kinds of interests. If I want to know something, I talk to this young man. He's like, well, you know, back in Tartaria, and we did this back in the Middle Ages, and this happened here, and then this had the flood, and you're like, whew, okay? His etymology is incredible. He doesn't have one interest. All kinds of interests fascinate this young man. He does have a foundational knowledge in a lot of different categories, and he's completely very, very broad. He's got a very encompassing approach on all kinds of things, and what we call a compartmentalized world. This young guy has a passion for the truth, learning, and teaching. Now, I'll tell you this, he doesn't have any official qualifications, but then again, in this day and age, how many of your kids actually have any kind of foundational anything? All right? He's one of the most critical thinkers I've ever met. So you really don't need qualifications to exercise your brain. And as Ryan will say, look, I'm nobody special, okay? But in our humble opinion, he's just somebody that really cares about trying to put all of these pieces together. And I hope this really adds to what's going to come up as the day goes along, and you'll see how all of these pieces fit together. So without any further ado, I want to bring up my friend. Give him a hand, guys. This is Ryan Wolverton. Come on up, Ryan. Boom. This young man is fascinating. Be prepared to take some notes. There you go, my friend.
Thank you, Dana. I got a timer right here so I don't get too off. So today I tried to structure this one more so than what I normally do. Anybody that's heard me speak before knows I kind of bring a lot of information. So today I'm going to be talking about etymology. I'm going to be talking about doublespeak, and I will be closing with money and negotiable instruments. So let's begin. I want to open and say that I will do my best to cover the various interrelating subject matters in depth, but due to the interest of time, I will have to be as efficient as possible. So my apologies for any misunderstandings, if any, that occur. If anyone thinks that what I say is crazy in any way, that is fine. I am not infallible, and I could be wrong. However, I challenge anyone to produce something of relevance that we can not only feel, but can also observe with our own eyes these days. If we just pause to stop and think, reflect, and reconsider. Evidence that isn't scrutinized or looked at the money trail, who's funding it, pros and cons considered, and accounting for the legitimacy of all parties involved is not science, it's dogma. Thank you for lending me your ear. I hope I don't bore you. Before getting into this, I want to give an honorable shout out to the territory of New Hampshire, which has just banned the spraying of chemicalized aerosols. Probably some of the most positive information that I've come across at a fairly broad level. Better late than never. For anyone unfamiliar, the aerosols that I'm referring to are commonly called chemtrails. These are some of the ingredients: aluminum oxide particles, arsenic, bacilli and molds, barium salts, barium titanates, cadmium, calcium, chromium, desiccated human red blood cells, ethylene dibromide, human white blood cells, which is a restrictor enzyme that's used in research labs to snip and combine DNA, lead, mercury, methyl aluminum, mold spores, mycoplasma, nano-aluminum coated fiberglass, nickel, radioactive cesium, submicron particles that contain live biological matter, unidentified bacteria, uranium, and fluoride. Forgive my thoroughness, and that's not even the full list. These are some of the effects to our environment: loss of wildlife, alteration of soil quality, alteration of quality of food, harder for trees to grow, and more. Some short-term effects are nosebleeds, panic attacks, persistent coughing, unexplained rashes, respiratory problems, short-term memory loss, stomach aches, suicidal thoughts, tinnitus, which usually, that's that ringing in your ear, which usually comes after they have just sprayed chemicals in the air, and others that are not recited. Some long-term effects are ADHD, allergies, Alzheimer's, aluminum or fluoride buildup in the pineal gland, asthma, autism, which current evidence links to mercury, autoimmune disorders, blood in your urine, personality disorder, cancer, chronic fatigue, depression, bruising, eye problems, nearsightedness and farsightedness by altering the intraocular eye pressure, fibromyalgia, eye floaters, irregular heartbeat, heart disease, high cholesterol, hypoglycemia, and more. This is not to fear-monger, but to rather aim for full awareness and disclosure. I don't subscribe to ignorance is bliss. These solutions are learning about it, making healthier choices, taking vitamins and minerals, and prioritizing ameliorating behaviors in whatever way, shape, or form that may be. Our bodies are beautiful, and they have multiple processes to fight against this. One quick thing I wanted to say, like one solution is wild blueberries, barley grass, juice extract powder, spirulina, cilantro, Atlantic dulce, and combine all that up and make a smoothie. 2 cups of frozen wild blueberries, 4 ounces of wild blueberry juice, 1 cup of cilantro, 1 teaspoon of spirulina, 1 teaspoon of barley grass juice powder, 1 tablespoon of Atlantic dulce leaf flakes or liquid, 2 bananas, 1 orange, and 1 cup of water, which is optional. I don't have the time to go into all of what it does, but these are things that take metals out of our body, just as an example. So, now, without further ado, let's get into doublespeak. Intra-species protein reallocation. That's quite a way to say cannibalism. Enhanced interrogation, a way to say torture. A negative cash flow position, a way to mask being broke. I'm sure that we're all too familiar with companies that are looking for ways to reduce costs, which can just be an interesting way of firing people within the company. William Lutz, who has wrote the book on doublespeak, defines it as language that is designed to evade responsibility, make the unpleasant appear pleasant, the unattractive appear attractive. Language that is designed to mislead without having an awareness of being misled. The concept comes from George Orwell's 1984, which referenced doublethink and similarity. To know and not to know, to be conscious of complete truthfulness while telling carefully constructed lies. It's usually meant to mask, obfuscate, draw attention away from, etc., not necessarily to lie deliberately. As an example of deceptive language, looking at the stateofobesity.org site around 2017, we can see that Texas had the 5th highest obesity rate. In the plan to combat obesity, they released this quote, "Commissioner Miller is announcing updates to the school nutrition policy in Texas, which includes a repeal of certain prohibitions that restricted the use of fryers and the sale of low-calorie beverages in Texas schools. Both of these items are permissible according to the current federal guidelines." The low-calorie beverages that they referenced, they meant sodas, which I guess is technically lower calorie than a whole meal, am I right? Need I remind anyone of the obesity epidemic that we are currently in right now, with roughly 60 to 70% of Americans being obese? 60% of American adults have at least one chronic disease. 40% have 2 or more. It is now a fact that to be healthy and disease-free is not normal. Edward Sapir wrote in his book, The Status of Linguistics as a Science, quote, "Language is a guide to social reality. Though language is not ordinarily thought of as an essential interest to the students of social science, it powerfully conditions all of our thinking about social problems and processes. Human beings do not live in the objective world alone, nor alone in the world of social activity as is ordinarily understood, but are very much at the mercy of the particular language which has become the medium of expression for their society. It is quite an illusion to imagine that one adjusts to reality essentially without the use of language, and that language is merely an incidental means of solving specific problems of communication or reflection. The fact of the matter is that the real world is, to a large extent, unconsciously built up on the language habits of the group. No two languages are ever sufficiently similar to be considered as representing the same social reality. Representing it. The worlds in which different societies live are distinct worlds, not merely the same world, but with different labels attached, end quote. Beautiful and thought-provoking, relevant words. Most these days don't want the truth unembellished. They would prefer euphemisms, which is basically language that reflects reality and conceals the truth. One of my personal favorites, sarcasm, currently is what is currently being attempted to become normalized, a MAP, a minor attracted person. They're not a pedophile. How ludicrous. There are 4 kinds of doublespeak. 1, euphemisms, as we just went over a little bit. Words or phrases that are used to avoid a distasteful reality. Number 2 is jargon, a specialized language of a trade or a profession, which is use-dependent. An example would be organoleptically detectable, which simply just means you're able to taste and smell it. Number 3 is gobbily gook. We're all familiar with that one, also known as bureaucratese every time these politicians get up there, which is simply overwhelming the audience with words. Think politicians, think public relations, etc., etc. And number 4 is inflated language, which is designed to make the simple seem complex or to give an air of importance to people, things, or situations. As we covered earlier, intraspecies protein reallocation being cannibalism. Now, if we look at the Lipitor graphs, if we can pull up the graphs, guys, Rick, the graphs, sorry. This was found by Dr. David Diamond, and this was a graph as an example of how doublespeak is used. In comparing the data from placebo in comparison to atorvastatin, which is Lipitor, we can actually see that there is a negligible reduction, that they have somehow calculated to equate to a 36% reduced chance of risk. Lipitor made $100 billion in revenue due to these marketing schemes and deceptive language. After David Diamond analyzed everything, there's actually only a 1.1% difference. And when you take 1.1% and divide it by 3, you get 36, which is how they manipulated the data to advertise Lipitor as a 36% reduced risk, said Dr. David Diamond after running the necessary calculations. How many people would have taken Lipitor if it said the truth, that it only reduces risk by 1%? Further examples, there are 56 words for sugar. Another example is Dr. Frank Lutz in his book, Words That Work. It's not what you say, it's what people hear, published in 2007. He said, focus on those words that cause people to change their minds, behaviors, and attitude. As he has been championing hard to get the public against the estate tax and trying to replace it with the more aptly named death tax. He is quoted as saying, a clear but somewhat narrow majority of Americans today support eliminating the so-called estate tax, but more than 70% would abolish the death tax. He says, it's the same tax, but nobody really knows what an estate is, but they certainly know what it is to be taxed when you die, end quote. One other example is from the Minneapolis Tribune in 1982, where they described the anesthesiologist turning the wrong knob and instead giving a mother a fatal dose of nitrous, instead of giving oxygen, gave a mother a fatal dose of nitrous oxide, killing both mother and baby. It was described as a therapeutic misadventure. Yeah. When we don't understand what is being said to us, it's good to ask for clarification and to scrutinize the exact meaning as a great habit of course, which is the perfect segue to etymology. Etymology is the study of facts associated with and the origin of the development of words. It comes from the Greek word etymologia, which means analysis of a word to find its true origin. A great veil has been cast over us through a great many tactics, but especially language, being one of the myriad. One of the biggest problems that we face today is the ambiguity of words, colloquialisms, words that essentially have numerous definitions based on their implication. Let's look at the definition of a person, which includes a natural person, which is an oxymoron in and of itself, a firm, which legally means a name, which is tied to a name, co-partnership, association, limited liability company, or a corporation. The entire essence of the let's pretend legal fiction game is to get you to be a corporation functioning in a state of fascism in a limited liability world. The system cannot perpetuate itself without us. I just want to say that I know that words change over time, but why use adjectives such as the ones that we will see is what I am hoping that you will all ask yourself. Human being, defined as a human being by birth, but in some part resembling a lower animal, a monster that hath no inheritable blood and cannot be heir to any land. The land, right? You got to pay attention to the words. And that comes from Ballantyne's Law Dictionary, 1930. Then it also says sea monster. So you go over to monster, and the definition of monster is a monster hath no inheritable land and cannot be heir to any land, albeit it be brought forth in marriage, but although it hath deformity in any part of its body, yet if it hath human shape, it may be heir. So they have written it in such a way, Another one is one of the definition of drugs in 21 United States Code 321 subsection G is associated with cattle. And it says, quote, articles other than food that are intended to affect the body of man or other animals. So it includes us with animals, end quote. When we start to realize that we are looked at as livestock, we can begin to see through the mask of deception that's been overlaid so many facets in our society with silent weapons that have many faces, which the silent weapons is a reference to Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars document, in which an excerpt on energy says, energy is recognized as the key to all activity on Earth. Natural science is the study of the sources and the control of natural energy. And social science, theoretically expressed as economics, is the study of the sources and control of social energy. Both are bookkeeping systems, mathematics. Therefore, mathematics is the primary energy science, and the bookkeeper can be king if the public can be kept ignorant of the methodology of the bookkeeping. I'm hoping I'm painting the picture of the meticulousness of their methodology. Etymology is one of the foundational ways in which we can begin to scrutinize things with ever more criticality, as well as with a deeper understanding and ability to see through selective disclosure, euphemisms, and the contortions of definitions and words that have been done so as to warp a person's perception. Language is a powerful thing, and the way that the words are put together shed even more light on the power in the word. I will also bring to attention the document Protocols of the Elders of Zion. This is important when reading this document because it was intentionally written so as to confuse the reader. When reading this document, if you look this up, you must replace the word Jews with Illuminati or secret societies, Zion with a Z, and replace it as Psion, Sion, and Goyim as cattle, which is how the masses of the earth are viewed. There is a section in Protocol 1 in which they say, quote, the political has nothing in common with the moral. The ruler who is governed by the moral is not a skilled politician and is therefore unstable on his throne. He who wishes to rule must have recurse to both cunning and to make believe. Remember that a politician is a combination of a politic and a magician. Great national qualities, I'm still quoting, great national qualities like frankness and honesty are vices in politics, for they bring down rulers from their thrones more effectively and certainly than the most powerful enemy. Such qualities must be the attributes of the kingdoms of the Goyim, the cattle, but we must in no way be guided by them, for our right lies in force and might. Another excerpt from Protocol 2 says, quote, our employees chosen from the Goyim cattle must be of a type that submit to blind and servile obedience to our specialists and advisors who have been trained from childhood to rule the affairs of the world. Think of the successes that we have arranged for Darwinism, Marxism, Nietzscheism, etc. To us in the secret societies, it is plain what a destructively disintegrating force these directives have had upon the minds of the Goyim cattle. The great force of today is the press. It is in our hands, and through it, we have gained the gold. And that's why gold is represented on the periodic table as AU, because AU is author, authorize, authority. Whoever had the gold makes the rules. As you can see, there is much deceit and disdain towards us in this wicked system of things. America, as well as general society at large, are essentially functional illiterates, not my words, having been indoctrinated since birth with little to no real understanding of what words mean. While the majority of authoritative positions are occupied by lawyers and those that are familiar and those blind, subservient types. This is the definition of nescience, as it was never taught, or ignorance from ignoring and a lack of interest. We have to understand that most of us have, are, or were living in such a way that is backwards, a direct inversion of how we are supposed to be in a world of meaningless distraction. Etymology is important because without it, I would be incapable of writing the aforementioned. I would be incapable of truly discerning and trying to use that discernment for what is written in a purposefully obfuscatory and occult way. All of us have this ability, but we must turn it on. How? It takes 21 days for the mind to make a new mental pathway, or as is colloquially known, a habit. We must commit to better habits. We must be more thorough and analytical as examples. We must look up the definitions of words that we don't know. Look up the etymology of the word. Look up the time period of the word in which it was used and reference material from around that time period with foundational knowledge to truly understand the meaning and intent. I never said it was easy, but most don't do this for a variety of reasons, and it is costing us dearly. I truly believe that if we start to apply scrutiny towards what words mean, and we have the due diligence to look into things, that we will improve for the better and make it harder on our oppressors. And whatever may come our way, I embrace this confrontation, as it is in many ways a battle of wit, which is why the powers that be spend so much money trying to influence it as much as they can. Most people in the world embody this phrase in Latin. Mundis vult decepi ergo decepiatur, which means that the world wants to be deceived and compromised, and so it is. Latin is a very contextual language, and we can see from decepi the beginnings of the words that we use today: deception, deceit. I'd like to finish my written piece with some scriptures that I feel are relevant. This is from Habakkuk 2, 6, and 8. And just like Pastor Gene said earlier, I hope the similarity in what's happening today is noticed. Here we go with the scripture. Will not all of these take up a taunt song against him, even mockery and insinuations against him, and say, woe to him who increases what is not his, for how long, and makes himself rich with loans? Will not your creditors rise up suddenly, and those who collect from you awaken, who you collect from awaken? Indeed, you have become plunder for them, because you have looted many nations. All the remainder and remnant of the peoples will loot you, because of the human bloodshed and violence done to the land, to the town, and all of its inhabitants. And then the next one is from I guess I didn't put it in here. Oh, I feel terrible. Here we go. Is there a man in the wicked house? Is there yet a man in the wicked house, along with his treasures of wickedness, and a short measure that is cursed or abominable? Can I justify wicked scales and a bag of deceptive weights? For the rich men of the city are full of unrighteous gain. Her residents speak lies, breaching contract, and their tongue is deceitful in their mouth. So I will also make you sick, striking you down, desolating you because of your sins. You will eat, but you will not be satisfied. You will sow, but you will not reap. Slavery. If you sow something but you're not reaping anything, that's slavery. Therefore, I will give you up for destruction. I regrettably, I know that's from Micah. I thought I'd put the scripture in here, but it's not. But I know it's from the book in Micah. And the next one is, I aim to not be destroyed for a lack of knowledge, just as it references in Hosea 4 and 6. And I have one that's on page 2. And I wanted to say that I hope that we can become better acquainted with recognizing the manipulative power of words and perception. And that I also hope that the combination of my words, dedication, and scrutiny have laid the seed for daring to scrutinize our word choices and meanings. And a little bit too late now. Now we're going to get into the money. But those last two scriptures I read, I meant to read it after this because it would have hit more, but it doesn't matter. It's going to explain it all now. So, what is money? From the Annenberg Guide to the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 10 says, no state shall enter into any treaty, grant letters of marque and reprisal, coin money, that's the important one, emit bills of credit, and make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts. Money is defined in Black's Law Dictionary as the usual and ordinary exception of gold, silver, or paper money that is used as a circulating medium of exchange. And it does not embrace notes, bonds, evidences of debt, or other personal or real estate. Well, if you whip out your cash, it says Federal Reserve note on it, so we have to start digging deeper. By definition, what we have been told is money is in fact not so. These are negotiable instruments, as defined by Uniform Commercial Code, Chapter 3-104, which defines it as a promise or an order to pay. A promise to pay is known as a promissory note, and an order to pay is a bill of exchange. An instrument is any document, contract, deed, or security. Negotiable means transferable, and negotiate, it's in the word. This comes from the Bills of Exchange Act in 1882, chapters 61, 45, and 46, which define bill to mean bill of exchange and note to mean promissory note. We all know them as bills. You get them every month. Remember unconditional promise and order to pay. That's what everyone's bills are. What is a bill a shortening for? A bill of exchange. What is a bill of exchange? It is a negotiable instrument. What is a Federal Reserve note? It's also a Federal Reserve or a negotiable instrument. Some may deny this, but respectfully, one's inability to grasp this doesn't remove the legitimacy. This has been designed to make it difficult to really understand what's going on. In Uniform Commercial Code, Chapter 3-102, it is defining subject matter, and it is speaking on all of the Uniform Commercial Code, Chapter 3, which is all about negotiable instruments. In subsection A, it says, this article applies to negotiable instruments. It does not apply to money, to payment orders governed by Article 4A. In other words, this isn't a conspiracy theory, as most people would say. All bills that we all know and love, utility, etc., are bills of exchange, which are negotiable instruments, just like Federal Reserve notes. A promissory note is all mortgages, all banknotes signing for a loan on a car or business loan, etc. It's a promissory note. The note is the physical piece of paper that you're going to sign, which basically is the negotiable instrument. What criteria needs to be met in order to be a negotiable instrument? There are 3. It needs to be an unconditional promise or an order to pay. It needs to be signed, and it needs to be written. Most believe that when you get a loan, the bank gives you other people's money that's already in the bank at interest. But 12 U.S.C. 83, which is defining loans by bank on its own stock, says in subsection A, no national bank shall make any loan or discount on the security of the shares of its own capital stock. So how do banks give money? The way that the bank gives you money comes from the Federal Reserve Act, Section 16, Part 2, which is called Note Issues. And it is also found at 12 United States Code, Section 412. And that is also called Application for Notes and Collateral Required. And it says, such application shall be accompanied with a tender, which is giving somebody or something or offering someone, to the Federal Reserve agent of collateral in amount equal to the sum of the Federal Reserve notes thus applied for and issued, blah, blah, blah. It's basically saying that if you want to apply for notes, you need to give us something in exchange. So what's happening is that you're endorsing, which means you're releasing with your signature, and that's where all the power is. When you sign it, you're completing the last step required to make it a negotiable instrument. Remember, unconditional promise or order to pay, written and signed. When they slide those mortgage documents over to you and they say, sign here, if you do, you're bringing that document, contract, into existence. The collateral security that is also referenced is that the bank gives the Federal Reserve in exchange for the Federal Reserve notes in exchange. When they write that application for notes is the negotiable instrument that you just created with your signature, the promise or the order to pay. The way in which you sign is where all the magic happens, and it is called endorsements. Sign and endorse when it comes to a financial instrument are synonymous, and you would do well to replace the word signature with endorsement. UCC 3-205 references special endorsements, blank endorsements, and anomalous endorsements. And it says in subsection A, if an endorsement is made by the holder of an instrument, whether payable to an identified person or payable to a bearer, and the endorsement identifies a person to whom it makes the instrument payable to, it is a special endorsement. When specially endorsed, an instrument becomes payable to the identified person, and it may be negotiated only by the endorsement of that person. The principles stated in section 3-110 apply to special endorsements. Subsection B, referring to an endorsement, not a special endorsement, says, an endorsement is made by the holder of an instrument, and it is not a special endorsement, it is a blank endorsement. Ever heard of a blank check? When endorsed in blank, an instrument becomes payable to the bearer. Who's the bearer? The person that's taking it there. And may even be negotiated by transfer of possession alone until specially endorsed. And then the last part, which is also important, the holder may convert a blank endorsement that consists only of a signature into a special endorsement by writing above the signature of the endorser words identifying the person to whom the instrument is made payable. So this is exactly how they've written it up, to take advantage of everyone. It's all the stuff we're all talking about. A blank endorsement means that it is payable to the bearer, which is defined in UCC 3-109, payable to the bearer or to the order. And it doesn't state a payee. If it does not state a payee who it is to be paid for, it is essentially a blank check. When you sign it and you don't specify who the proceeds of this security swap is supposed to go to in the endorsement, not stating a payee, it's payable to whoever wants it. And the financial institutions take it as a gift. In their eyes, you just abandoned or released that security. They then put a special endorsement on it. They claim the security, and they then go to the Federal Reserve, which isn't federal at all, remember. It's a privately owned corporation leading back to the crown. They go to the Federal Reserve window, essentially, and write an application for notes with the security that you donated. It's fraud. Then they get the money from that, then loan you your money back with interest. If you look and dig, you will see on a mortgage loan, you will find, do you have the special endorsement picture, Barbara? If you look on a mortgage loan, you will find endorsements on them. And if you dig, they will say special, they will be special, they will say pay to the order of without recourse. I don't know if the picture is able to be brought up, but I have pictures, so if anybody wants to see me after it, I could show it to you. In financial transactions, the words without recourse disclaim any liability to the subsequent holder of a financial instrument. And that's exactly what they're writing when they specially endorse any kind of negotiable instrument. Thus, endorsing a check and adding without recourse to the signature means that the endorser then takes no responsibility if the check bounces for insufficient funds. You can specially endorse your bills of exchange and promissory notes. You can write without recourse, pay to the order of, your name in all caps, by, then your name not in all caps, signing, and then putting that below your name in normal font. This says that I'm giving you the instrument, but I'm not donating it to you. You're allowed to go to the Federal Reserve window, bring back those funds, get those funds, put those funds on my account, zero out the account swap, and you can give them interest as payment for the swap. Lots of places won't do this. You may have to litigate, but it's been done, and I just wanted to pass on the fundamentals. And, again, I encourage everyone to do their own due diligence. Don't just listen to anything I say. Sit down. Take the time to read and discern and look things up, And I pretty much wanted to close with that. So, we're all good. So, I thank you for listening to me. I appreciate you all.
Is your head spinning? I'll tell you. I've learned a lot from Ryan. There's how to become a national, signatures, how to sign different things, how to go back and research things. There are so many ways that the government has gotten us into knots. And part of the things that Mountain Patriots wants to do is bring as much awareness as we can to people to be able to go out there, do some of your own research, and figure out exactly how you can get away from this. And Ryan covered something really important, which was etymology. Look up the words. What did he mean? What is a mortgage? Does anybody know? It's a mortality gauge. Significant. Sign if I can't. Amazing, isn't it? So there's all kinds of different words that are in here, and in the content. And I'll tell you guys, the Constitution, our founding fathers were absolutely ingenious. When they put this whole document together, it just absolutely amazes us how far off that they've skewed from this. And that document is almost perfect.